I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a case that has TikTokers talking about one of their own. Sarah Patrick was very public on social media. Then her mother and stepfather were shot and killed inside their home. What happened next is what has everyone talking about. Here's the story. Sarah Patrick, just 16 when the unthinkable occurred, now stands at the center of a chilling mystery. On a February morning, her 5-year-old sister discovered the bodies of Kristen and James Brock, both shot in their bed. Sarah placed the 911 call and publicly mourned online, posting tearful TikToks and delivering a haunting eulogy that ended with the words, "I'm sorry." But investigators say a mountain of physical and digital evidence paints a darker picture. Sarah is charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault and will be tried as an adult for the murder of her mother and stepfather. Her social media activity, including outreach to true crime TikTok influencers, suggesting sensational attention to the case, has only deepened suspicion. With no motive revealed yet, the community reels and the tragedy leaves the haunting question: why would this teen allegedly kill her own parents? This story is still a bit of a mystery, regardless of the fact that someone's been charged and prosecutors say they have a mountain of evidence, which no one has seen yet. But why? Why would she do this? Teenager in her senior year. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Murders usually don't make a lot of sense, but this one, very different. I want to bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas, who joins us. Cody, I know you've been down there. You've talked to folks connected to the story. Let's start with the accused here, Sarah Patrick. What has she said about what happened?
Well, Vinny, that's a little hard to say because we haven't heard her say anything. There's been no video interrogation that we've seen. There's been no public statement to police that we've read or anyone has read. So we've really had to piece this thing together from different sources. But the closest thing we do have, Vinny, is a message from Sarah Grace herself to TikToker, allegedly, reportedly, who's a true crime influencer online on TikTok, Instagram, what have you. And I've spoken to her in the past regarding this case. And Vinny, we have a screenshot from one of the posts that allegedly reportedly made on her TikTok page showing the messages that Sarah Grace sent her herself from her own account. And you can see it right there on your screen for our viewers at home. One of those messages says, she introduces her parents, Kristen Brock and James Brock, and the message following says, "They're my parents, and out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came in my house with me and my 5-year-old sister and shot my parents, brutally leaving them for me and my little sister to wake up to." So, Vinny, that's the closest thing as far as a statement that we have directly from Sarah Grace in this case, who is obviously the defendant here. But along with that, at the time of her arrest, Carroll County police officials said they have plenty of evidence that points towards her guilt. Take a listen.
So I believe in the beginning of any case, everyone's a suspect. I think I told many of you that when we were on scene that day. However, as an investigation continues and everything ebbs and flows, like I said in my press release, mountains of evidence has gotten us through here today. Lots of processing, lots of working with our law enforcement partners to get us to where we are today that honed in on her as a suspect. She has been arrested and charged now, and we feel confident that she is responsible for their murders.
Now, Vinny, I also spoke to Sarah Grace's grandfather, a man named Dennis Nolan, actually the father of her now deceased mother. Now, he says when Sarah Grace got arrested, he wasn't told about any evidence. Take a listen to this. What are the feelings? What are the emotions? And I understand that you're standing by her side. You believe she's innocent.
Oh, I mean, I'm just in total shock. I mean, because she, first of all, the length of time that's passed and the fact that they arrested her without any evidence that I know of, everything seems circumstantial, and I think they were just desperate to arrest someone and to try and, because the case was open for months, a lot of investigation. I know they tried hard to find the murder weapon. They tried hard to find who was involved. They investigated a lot of people And for them to charge Sarah without, you know, and I'll say this, the investigator told me the day they issued the warrant, when I asked him, I said, well, what proof why did you pick on Sarah? He said, well, she's the only one who could have done it.
So, Vinnie, that's the information we have as far as right now, as far as what Sarah Patrick says happened that night. But to note, prosecutors, police officials have not really elaborated on what that mountain of evidence really is just yet.
All right, Cody sticking around throughout the program, helping us out. So the story is pretty simple, right? Like, she's sleeping, her sister's sleeping, her parents are sleeping in their room. Someone breaks in on a Thursday night, shoots him, leaves. She wakes up, finds the dead bodies. Brings us to our first question in our investigation. Is Sarah Patrick's story believable? Does that make sense? Here to help us answer that question is forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. He's also the host of the very popular podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Also joining us, Georgia criminal defense attorney John Luke Weaver. He represented Melody Farris in the Burn Pile murder trial, which you watched right here on Court TV. Great to have you both here. Great to see you. Joseph Scott Morgan, let me begin with you. Does that story, ring true or credible or believable to you that that could have happened?
Well, I think the most striking thing that I've heard is that they have said that there were no signs of forced entry into this home. For me, that's kind of our boilerplate statement that we make on crime scenes, no signs of forced entry or struggle, right? As to the struggle part, we don't really know that much, but they have stated that there were no signs of forced entry. So did these people sleep commonly with their door unlocked, their house unsecured, were there open windows, that sort of thing, where someone could have gained access to the interior of this home? I think that is rather perplexing. Considering the day and age that we live in, people many times now are hyper vigilant about those sorts of things. So from that perspective, no, I have questions, I think, as to the security of the home and who could have access to these very intimate spaces, and why weren't the children harmed? Why were an infirmed man and his middle-aged wife, why were they specifically targeted? So those are big questions for me.
Yeah, John, what are your thoughts here? Because this is kind of like a case, it's almost like an assassination, like someone's going in there and carrying out a hit. There's no robbery, there's nothing else other than the story is someone goes in there, kills him, and leaves, and that's it. What are your thoughts?
I think one of the things we need to know more about would be what would the forensic interview of the 5-year-old younger sister, what would that reveal? I think that would be very important in this case because the timing on how did she find the bodies, because it's my understanding that she was the first one to the body. So we have an issue of, did Sarah actually hear a shooting? Did she not? Again, there's supposedly mountains of evidence, but there's a huge issue that the state's going to have. How did she not hear this shooting?
Yeah, Joseph Scott Morgan, I'm thinking about, a case like this and what you would expect to see. If it's two people shot while they're sleeping, there wouldn't necessarily be a lot of time to react. Would you expect there to be evidence of something happening other than two people getting shot? And getting in and out of the house. Again, there's the noise factor there. A car's got to pull up. There's a lot of things that have to take place here.
Yeah, there truly does have to be many things that have to take place. And for me, I would be very interested in the proximity of the bodies one to another. We've kind of gotten a hint about this relative to them being in bed and being shot multiple times. The reaction to the sound of the noise, because, contrary to what most people think, unless it is a headshot, people generally don't die immediately. Was there any kind of reactive time that they had? Was an alert sent up? Or is this something somebody was capable of doing with great stealth? You know, I guess many people might flee to the thought, was this a suppressed weapon, which you can purchase suppressors out there, but you put a big bullseye on your person when you purchase one, because there's additional paperwork that has to go into this. And again, the big question is, how does this teenager get access to such a weapon?
John, let me ask you, if her story is that someone came in and killed my stepfather and my mother and they left and they didn't do anything else, it would seem there'd have to be a reason. Is it incumbent? I know there's no burden, but would it be incumbent upon the defense to perhaps raise or investigate or figure out that there was something going on in the lives of mom or stepdad that would give someone a motive to want to take them out?
Vinnie, I think that would be very smart of the defense attorneys in this case to do, just to point the finger towards an alternative suspect just to simply bring up that possibility, because otherwise at this point you've got a 5-year-old in the home and you've got a 16-year-old in the home with a history of issues with her mother and with her stepfather. So these issues, that's what the jury's going to be looking at. But if you can start to say, oh, well, mom, she was having issues with other people in town that you could maybe find through text messages in the cell phone. Maybe you already know, your attorney's already figured out through an investigator who these people are. That's going to, Vinnie, I think that's going to be very important.
All right, our guests are staying with us. Coming up next, what does Sarah Patrick's behavior tell us?
Sarah was a good kid. I mean, she really was.
The disappearance of mother Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair.
The massive trail of evidence.
This incredible timeline of Google searches.
It shows everything that was in his mind.
He searched how long before a body starts to smell.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
People are assuming her guilt, and she's innocent until proven guilty. And there are people that are assuming that she's guilty and making comments online that are totally uncalled for.
The father of the victim believes they've arrested the wrong person for the murder of his daughter. The person they've arrested is his granddaughter. He believes that she's innocent. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, we spoke about her version of what happened, but she's also been someone who's been sort of public to a certain extent. What else has she said since the double murder?
Well, Vinnie, following the double murder, she took to her own personal TikTok and started posting videos of her crying and showing all this really sad emotion. We see some of that on the screen right now. Makeup running, crying. She's posting things with the captions like hard fought and it hasn't hit that they're actually gone yet. It seems like she's showing some sort of grief here, Vinnie. But as we mentioned last segment, I spoke with true crime TikToker, allegedly, reportedly. Take a listen to what she had to say about going into more detail about the interaction she had with Sarah directly.
I had not heard of this case until Sarah Grace messaged me on June 3rd asking me to cover the Brock case. She went on to explain it was the unsolved case of her parents' murder, her mother, Kristen, and stepfather, James, and it needed a light shined on it. I told her I would certainly look into it. I didn't have much of a reaction yet because I get requests like that all the time. So nothing suspicious. I just felt bad for her and I was very nice to her, which looking back on it is just very strange. But then I told her if she wanted any specific photos included, she could email those to me. So at that point, she emailed me photos and her version of what happened that night. Now, once I read that, there were a few things that I thought a little bit about, but then I said, no. Have compassion. She just lost her parents. This is a child. Her talking about, you'll get a lot of views if you cover this story. That was very strange. I should have thought more about that. And then in her email to me, which I haven't talked about publicly yet, but I will tell you, she told me she did not hear anything that night.
Strange interaction there, Vinny. Didn't hear anything that night in that house. Now, I also spoke with another true crime influencer on TikTok. Her handle is True Crime Mama. She also knows allegedly, reportedly, and speaks with her frequently as well. Now, True Crime Mama said that soon after Sarah Grace reached out to allegedly, reportedly, somebody in contact with Sarah Grace reached out to her, asking if she had any information that she could share with Sarah's, family members and all that. She informed Sarah, or this person that knew Sarah, that she did not have any more further information. But months before her arrest, Sarah Grace Patrick delivered a tearful eulogy at the funeral of her mother and stepfather. Now, this video is posted on Facebook by family relative Kristen Dowda. Take a listen.
I just wanted to say goodbye to my mama and Jamie since we never got the chance to. I was so used to you guys always being here to the point that I never once thought to imagine y'all not being here. I didn't have a single clue how much I needed y'all until now. Although there's nothing we can do to bring them back, we still have control over how we treat people with us today. I love you guys, and so do I. And so do they. I'm sorry.
So, Vinny, we see more of that emotional behavior, and this right here that we're seeing on the screen now is video of her crying in a previous hearing regarding this case. So we see her crying, but we also hear about her reaching out to these online influencers about getting views on a case surrounding her now deceased parents. So with all this behavior, Vinny, with the emotions, but then with the eulogy, but then with the views, it just leaves open a question of what was really going through her mind during this time.
Oh, absolutely. Cody, thanks so much. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. What does Sarah Patrick's behavior tell us? Here to help answer our question is psychiatrist, forensic specialist, and medical health expert, Dr. Yalda Safai, and retired police commander, author, and host of the podcast Profiling Evil, Mike King. Great to have you both here. All right, Dr. Safai, what are your thoughts here about her behavior? And again, she was a senior in high school when all this was transpiring.
I was thinking whether her behavior is concerning or telling of something. And it's yes and no, because if this were an adult doing something like this, going on online, spilling the details of an ongoing investigation, reaching out to TikTok influencers, you would say that's incredibly concerning. What were they thinking? But this is a child. Children are not rational. The part of their brain called the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for impulse control and rational thinking isn't fully formed until age 45. They act impulsively. They can't really understand the consequences of what they're doing. And nowadays, it seems like teenagers have details of their lives plastered online. Not only of their lives, but their emotions as well. So is it concerning for a teenager to go online and post videos of herself crying about, her parents' murder? No, that's kind of become our normal. That's not really concerning to me. But, if, again, this were an adult, I would be saying, what were they thinking? They shouldn't be doing something like this. So the TikTok part is not that concerning to me. Her behavior in the courtroom and her behavior during the eulogy is pretty consistent with someone who's in mourning, is grieving. However, I always say don't judge the way that people behave in response to stressors, because people respond differently. Some people, don't cry when they're under a lot of stress or they're very anxious. They might laugh. I've seen this all the time. So how a person behaves under stress differs from person to person. But I just think we should keep in mind that this is a child, so we should be looking at it as such and not judging her based on what an adult would do in the same situation.
Yeah, and Mike, that's a big part of this case is her age. The case was waived up, so she's being tried as an adult, even though she wasn't an adult at the time that this happened. But then you look at her, and she looks even younger in person with the freckles and the emotions and everything else. What are your thoughts about her behavior after the murder of her mom and her stepfather in a house where she was sleeping close by?
Well, I really appreciate the doc kind of laying the groundwork there, Vinny, because this is what's so important for an investigator to keep in mind, is it's not as much about the way you initially see the person behaving or responding or reaching out like she's doing with social media. What's most important for an investigator and the investigative process is to figure out the baseline, figure out what this individual does in a normal course of her day. Does she reach out to creators and talk to social media people on a regular basis? How involved is she in social media? But more importantly, Vinny, I want to know more about her personality. Is she manipulative in nature? Is she someone who has learned how to really work the system in order to get what she wants? Is she an individual who is conniving, or is she innocent and completely caught off guard by all of this? Because then I start looking at the behavior in the crime scene, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit, but we see the interaction between her as an individual and the behaviors we're seeing in the crime scene, the way the bodies were left in the room, where the bodies were when they were murdered, where the doors are open and how they're open. All of that starts becoming really important in the aggregate. And we just have to keep reminding ourselves, don't focus on the individual pieces and parts, but make sure you bring them all together. I guess kind of like you always have handled circumstantial cases. Put all the pieces together and let the A's and the B's help you prove C.
And Dr. Safai, whether she did it or didn't do it, she's in a house when a double murder takes place. What are your thoughts about if she should have, or how it could impact her if she goes through that, whether she committed it or didn't commit it, and never got any sort of professional counseling or help after the fact? And how would that perhaps impact the way she's acting?
You know, I love that you bring this up, because I think whether she did it or not, this is an extremely traumatic event. If you were the perpetrator of this event, it's also extremely stressful. You understand? So I'm glad you pointed that out. It doesn't matter whether she was the victim or the perpetrator here, if she did it or did not do. This is an extremely stressful event for a teenager to go through. It could be for even an adult to go through. So I can't imagine the amount of pressure she might be under, and that could definitely, I've seen this happen over and over again, definitely influence how she's behaving if she didn't get at least some sort of psychological debriefing right after this traumatic event. So thank you for pointing that out.
Dr. Safai, always great to have you. We appreciate it. Mike King's going to stick around. Still to come, what does the crime scene tell us? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the teenage girl from Georgia on social media who's now accused of shooting her parents while they slept and then posting about the tragedy. Here's the story. Sarah Patrick, a grief-stricken teenager once known for her tearful TikToks, has become the face of a chilling alleged betrayal. On February 20th, 2025, her 5-year-old half-sister found her mother, Kristen Brock, and stepfather, James Brock, shot dead in their Carrollton, Georgia home, both shot as they slept. Sarah called 911, but the tears unspooled across social media soon drew suspicion. Prosecutors now say a mountain of physical and digital evidence, including her haunting funeral eulogy and strategic TikTok outreach, paints a darker picture. In the weeks after the tragedy, she messaged true crime influencers, insisting the case would be, quote, a really big hit. With no motive yet established, law enforcement remains tight-lipped as they prepare to try her as an adult, charged with 2 counts of murder and aggravated assault in a trial set to begin in the first week of the new year. All right, let's check back in now with Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Let's talk about the scene now, where all this took place in Georgia, and this was not in Atlanta.
Yeah, Vinny, it took place in a home out in rural Carroll County, Georgia, just a little bit east of the Alabama-Georgia line. I went out there just to get a better feel for everything. Take a look. We're out here now in small town Carrollton, Georgia, where the home where these crimes occurred took place. Now, if you look down this street, this is Tyus Carrollton Road out here. You see it's not that busy of a street, but it is kind of a main freeway. Now, what you don't see on this street, you see these wooden poles, but what you don't see are security cameras on these poles, which leads us back to that question. If Sarah Grace Patrick, the teenager who lived in this home, did not commit these murders, then who did? And if they did, they would have had to have some kind of getaway plan down this street. And if they did, no cameras would have picked them up, unless you see the neighbor's house. There's one here over my shoulder. There's a neighbor right here across the street. There's a neighbor across over there on those acres of land. Unless they had some sort of Ring doorbell footage, some Ring camera surveillance, or any kind of home security surveillance, that is the only footage that would have picked up anyone leaving that February night. Now, back to the neighbors. They're sitting here. You see, this is not your traditional neighborhood. These houses are spread apart. They're across the street. They're acres apart. We do know multiple shots were shot in the house that night. Who could have heard those shots? And they were shot around 1:30, 1:40 in the morning. So if these neighbors were in a deep sleep, they may not have heard those shots unless, again, they have Ring camera footage that could have picked up the sound of those gunshots in this house where the crimes occurred. But again, this is out here in Carrollton, Georgia, where everything went down. Sarah Grace Patrick now facing double murder charges in those two shootings. Now, Vinny, what we also have here that's on the screen, we have drone footage of the house that really shows the essence of what I was talking about when I was actually out there in person. You can see this house is out in the country. It's on its own plot of land. No neighbors immediately next door like you see in typical suburbs, but more importantly, Vinny, about that stretch of land, that stretch of road, no cameras on that street.
All right. Great job describing the outdoor area. What do we know about the inside of that house?
Well, Vinny, the house has now been redone. It's been listed on Zillow. Now, whoever owns the house, now we don't know. Just fair warning for our viewers, we don't know if they've knocked out any walls or redone anything inside, but these are the images that are being shown now, which are likely not too far off from what it was when Sarah Grace and her family were in there. And we can see these photos right here. Nice house, nicely redone. Zillow lists the home at just over 1,800 square feet. It's sitting on 1.5 acres. And, we see pictures of the bedrooms. It's a 4-bed, 2-bath home, a nice little home out there in rural Carroll County. And Vinny, Zillow also has the floor plan of the home that we look at. And we have lit up each bedroom. And Vinny, the important thing to note here, you see how close these bedrooms are. And another thing that we can note, even though it's a nicely redone house, it's not some sprawling estate where, somebody's in the West Wing and you don't even know their home, even though you guys are both in the same house. Why is that important? Because we know that, according to one of these true crime influencers, that Sarah Grace told them that night when those multiple gunshots went off in the early hours in that February morning, that Sarah Grace said she heard nothing.
And also heard no one break into the house or come into the house, walking around the house. And you said 1,800 square feet, and all the bedrooms are in one half of the house, so that's probably like 900 square feet where all that is taking place. All right, that brings us to the next question in our investigation. What does the crime scene tell us, and what doesn't it tell us? Still here helping us answer that question, forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. He's also the host of the Body Bags podcast with Joseph Scott Morgan, along with retired police commander, author, and host of Profiling Evil, Mike King. All right, guys, Joseph Scott Morgan, I'll begin with you. What does this crime scene tell you, and what questions does it raise?
Well, the questions that it raises, I think, are, proximity to the victims per the alleged perpetrator. This is a tight, confined space. When I begin to think about this, even if the two victims were in bed adjacent to one another, dependent upon the proximity of these rounds that were fired into them, I would be very interested in blood deposition on all of the surfaces containing or that are adjacent to the bed. And Vin, I got to tell you, there's one important thing here, and I've seen cops trip up on this in the past, and that comes to young kids or younger individuals that are maybe peripheral to a case initially. I hope that they went through there and they collected every stitch of clothing that belonged to the accused. Additionally, I hope they got to her in time, Vin, to do GSR on her hands. I hope, because they would have recognized early on that these two individuals died as a result of gunfire-related deaths. So I would hope that they had done gunshot residue testing on this young lady's hands, and also on any of the clothing that they could have collected that might belong to the alleged perpetrator.
All right, Mike King, I want to get your thoughts, but I also want to throw into the mix for you. We've heard about this mountain of evidence, including digital evidence, but this is a case where the defendant lives at the crime scene, right? So, like, it's her house. Like, this is where she lives. What are your thoughts about that and the fact that no weapon has been recovered?
Well, I'll tell you, I really love being on with you and Joe Scott, because Joe Scott covered the things that are really important from the evidence that we know of. The things that we don't know of are the things that I'm really thinking about a lot, Vinny. Number one is that idea that, yeah, this is a person who lives in the home. So we're going to have to expect that her DNA is going to be throughout the home, that there's going to be signs and all kinds of things that would be easily explained, whether it's in that bedroom or any other room in the house. But it's the things that are not being said that I'm really going back to and I keep thinking about. Number one is that weapon that was used to commit these homicides. Is there a chance that that weapon, or the type of weapon that, because undoubtedly they've recovered bullet fragments, they've been able to identify what kind of weapon. We don't know if there were casings that were found at the scene, but they're going to be able to determine the type of weapon that killed mom and dad in that home. And I want to know, does dad have any of those kinds of weapons, and has the inventory of his weapons, if he is a weapon holder, is that inventory being completed, and is there anything missing? Because we have to understand where that weapon originated. We talked earlier about the idea of suppressors or other things. The risk is so great in trying to get something like that, and just one other person knowing that she was even looking for something like that could have potentially come back. So I think that's going to be something really important. I would suspect that the weapon originated in the home. But again, there's a lot to be seen in this case still. The other thing that I'm thinking about is the digital forensics off of her mobile device. And if she is so attached to social media and other things, there's a good possibility she's either educated in what can be tracked on a mobile phone, or she just can't leave the phone alone, even knowing that it might pose a danger. And so we have to know that law enforcement had enough information to get a grand jury to say go, and a prosecutor had enough information to say this is an adult-driven crime, that there's got to be a lot of stuff we don't know about.
Justice Scott Morgan, is there are you wondering if there's a second person potentially involved here? Because I know law enforcement had mentioned that early on. No one else has been charged, but for the weapon to be gone, I mean, either she's got to leave and go somewhere, or someone else has to do it, or she's completely innocent and it was this third-party intruder.
Yeah, that's got to be on the menu, Vin. It has to be. They have to explore that possibility. Any other adults that she may have had contact with, any friends of hers who those adults may have had a weapon in their home that she could have, taken away and spirited away, to if there's a premeditative element to this. I think that's going to be very, very significant here. And back to one other thing about digital data that I'm quite fascinated with, particularly from a death investigation standpoint. Remember, this gentleman was on an LVAD device, which actually helps the left ventricle function. This guy's on a waiting list for a heart transplant. You're going to get digital data that kind of gives you more of an exacting time, certainly better than I could do at a scene if I was examining a body, trying to determine postmortem information. I think that's going to be really interesting to dig into as well.
Wow. All right. A lot to it. All right. Big thanks to Justice Scott Morgan, Mike King. Always great to have your experience, insight. I know your time's valuable, and we really do appreciate it. Coming up next, will Sarah Grace testify?
I do not believe she has the integrity or accountability required to face the consequences of her actions.
The disappearance of mother Anna Walsh.
Her husband now charged with her murder.
All eyes on this accused killer.
Mr. Walsh was suspecting his wife of having an affair.
The massive trail of evidence.
This incredible timeline of Google searches.
It shows everything that was in his mind.
He searched how long before a body starts to smell.
The disappearance of Anna Walsh murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Who knows what's going on in a young person's mind like that, but she has been arrested and charged.
This is a big, big case. A lot of mystery because we have not seen all the evidence in the case, but we are so close to the trial happening. Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, what's the latest on this case inside the courtroom?
Well, Vinny, the defense was arguing for a change of venue, saying there was too much publicity that Sarah Grace Patrick would not be able to get a fair trial out in Carroll County. And Vinny, get ready, drum roll for the kicker here. They cited us, Court TV, as the cause of all that said publicity, as if we're not an international network that can be accessed from literally anyone, but I digress. But in their defense change of venue request, they say, quote, since July 2025, this case has generated unprecedented online attention, including dedicated Facebook groups, true crime forums, live stream commentators, and national media coverage from sources such as Court TV and People.com. This coverage has produced hundreds of public comments, many explicitly calling Miss Patrick guilty, using derogatory slurs, speculating on evidence, and openly declaring that she cannot receive a fair trial in Carroll County. So, Vinny, naturally, prosecutors responded, saying that while we, Court TV, have covered the case extensively, when you watch our coverage, we repeatedly reference the fact that the defendant is innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And prosecutors also noted that Court TV, us, is not based solely in Carroll County, and our coverage would undoubtedly continue regardless of the trial's location, which, you know, is correct. So, Vinny, ultimately, the judge sided with the prosecution. This trial will remain in Carroll County, and it will be underway January 5th of 2026.
Right at the start of the new year. Cody Thomas, thanks so much. All right, so the trial's happening. This will be the first big trial of 2026 here on your front row seat to justice. And here's our next question in our investigation. It's about this young defendant. Will Sarah Grace testify? Here to help with our investigation, criminal defense and civil attorney Jesse Law. And also joining us, criminal defense attorney John Luke Weaver, both practice in the state of Georgia. Jesse, let me ask you, what are your thoughts about this young defendant, freckles and all, very emotional? Do you think she'll testify? Do you think that's an opportunity to perhaps convince this jury to feel her loss, feel her pain, and understand that she's just a kid and she never would do this?
Good evening, Vinny, and thank you for letting me be on the show. Well, it is, I think you hit on a few key points. Very young, very emotional, and very immature. It would be very dangerous for Sarah Grace to take the stand and testify on her behalf. She's going to be subject to cross-examination. She's going to be subject to rapid-fire questions from the prosecutor, and she may break down, and her credibility may just fall apart right in front of a jury that could easily convict her on a highly circumstantial case. So I would say definitely no. Do not put her on the stand. Let the prosecutor carry their burden to prove their case against her beyond a reasonable doubt. And she should not say anything or do anything to help them along the process.
John Luke Weaver, let me throw another little piece of information in this question. Let's presume, like the jury's going to, that she's innocent. But not just presume she's innocent. Let's say she is factually innocent, like she did not do it, and you know she didn't do it. Do you think she should testify?
Vinnie, I think she should, and I think she will testify. Her story, she has to give background to why she puts so many odd things on social media, what they mean. And realistically, as a teenager, she needs to walk through with her attorney how teenagers communicate. It's almost just part of their regular everyday language to simply use a Snapchat or Instagram or any one of those, TikTok, as part of a conversation, if you will. It literally runs with a conversation. They'll be talking and they'll be TikToking at the same time. I see it in so many of my cases. And I think it's going to be important to explain that to the jury, that this was not odd and unique behavior for her. Some things that we just as, middle-aged adults see as odd may not be so odd for a teenager.
Jesse, how do you think the jury's going to respond to her appearance inside the courtroom? I mean, she's young, but she looks younger than she actually is.
Well, she is going to look very young and very impressionable. And yes, she's going to appeal to the jurors. They can't believe that someone this young could commit such a heinous crime. This case is built on such a bedrock of circumstantial evidence that it is going to be very difficult for her to be to look like one of those hardcore, hard-hewn, rough and tough criminals in front of the jury. They're going to see a young girl who is very, well, as you can see, very sweet, very impressionable, and it's going to be difficult for the jury to say, how could someone like her commit this heinous crime and shoot two people, her own parents, in cold blood? And there's got to be some hardcore evidence to link her to that crime. And so far in the entire show, everything has been circumstantial. I strongly disagree that if you let her try to explain her behavior, she may be walking herself up the garden path to a conviction.
John, what are your thoughts about motive in this case? I know, and we all know, the viewers know, they've heard me say it a million times, prosecutors don't have to prove it. But do you think that will be an important issue for this jury?
I think it will. I mean, when you look at a teenage girl, what is a teenage girl going to be in a dispute with her parents, boyfriends, potentially? And I think it should be looked at, and I don't know if it has been, as a possible alternative suspect is a boyfriend. I don't know what investigation has been done into that area. However, when you look at, well, I want to go live with dad. I'm having more fun at dad's house than at mom and stepdad's house. I don't know. But that could start to be a realm where the prosecution could focus a motive. They're preventing her from maybe being as free as she wants to be at 16, 17 years old.
It's all happening January 5th. Jesse Law, John Luke Weaver, great to have you on. I'm sure we'll have you on throughout our coverage of this trial. We appreciate it. This is now set, folks, officially to be the first big trial of 2026 on Court TV, and there's still a lot that we don't know about this case. Prosecutors, though, seem very confident, and it may be because they have a lot of evidence that has not been made public yet. However, if their case is simply, she's the only one who could have done it, that may not be enough to get them beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, it all starts the first week of 2026 right here on Court TV. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.